my husband, y'all know, my husband's Howie, right? He's been on Facebook quite a lot recently. And he decided a couple of months back, after seeing some of the things that have been posted that really bothered him and didn't seem consistent with God's kingdom of justice and making things right, he decided that he would just start posting and writing about what he's seeing, telling the truth, the kinds of arguments that occur with increasing mean-spiritedness, and mostly focusing on the wrong thing. Of course, as is often the case, when people are not communicating face-to-face, it is easy to be rude. In fact, folks seem to have no issue with saying incredibly offensive things to the ones who were intimately involved in their lives. It's been incredibly painful to see what these human beings who we've loved in previous ministry situations say hateful and appalling things to Howie. But after one such incident, he made this comment amid a larger response. He said, "Vile words used in a vitriolic manner does spiritual violence to the soul, to both the sender and the receiver." Then yesterday, someone who was involved in a more recent church ministry that we've been in and who's been following Howie's posts, he sent this to him. He said, "Hey, Mr. Snyder," which is so cute. "I saw on the comments of one of your posts that you explained," and I'll have to paraphrase here, he says, "that using vile comments is bad for the soul of the sender and the receiver. I was wondering if you could tell me what set of beliefs that comes from, and if you could teach me about other ways to respect and protect my spirit and that of others." He says, "I suffer from soul sickness, often throughout the last many years that present itself as alcoholism and other destructive behaviors. I'm being rehabilitated, but what I've learned most over the last 3 years of attempted recovery is that my relationship with God is the only thing that keeps me sober. And a lot of my behaviors can block me off from that sunlight of God's Spirit. So any wisdom would be much appreciated." What insight from this young man. Such self-awareness and redemption of some of the things that have been exchanged on Facebook. Psalm 8, David says, "You have set your glory above the heavens. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. Yet you have made them a little lower than God," just a little lower, "and crowned them with glory and honor. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth." I especially love this psalm because it clearly states, you are mindful of them, of humankind. And I have this thing about mindfulness. You might have heard. So we are made in God's image and in God's likeness. And in this way, we're created to be mindful of God and of one another as well. If something is about God, it should instruct us about who we are because we're made in God's image and likeness. Paul greets the Philippians with this exhortation. "Let your gentleness be known to everyone." And in the Message version, I love this. "Make it as clear as you can to all that you meet that you're on their side, working with them and not against them." Isn't that a great paraphrase? Make it clear as you can to all that you meet that you're on their side, with them and not against them. "Whatsoever is true and honorable, just, pure, lovely, Think on these things. Meditate on them. Practice mindfulness of justice, of loveliness. This might have something to do with being able to do that. What might it look like if we were all thinking on these things? Practicing mindfulness of loveliness, of truth, of purity, purposefully intentional to make it clear as I possibly can, that I am on your side, working with you, not against you. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. Would there not be much more loveliness in our conversations? Our Facebook messages about super important things would be swaddled in gentleness. I cannot help but think that God is reading our messages and hearing our conversations and saying, much like to Moses about the Israelites, they have been quick to turn aside from the way that I created them. They have cast for themselves an image of a political party, of success, or of the ideal church, and have worshipped it and sacrificed friendships and relationships and the gospel of Jesus to it. These are your gods, O America, who brought you up out of your enslavement to the blindness to my image, healed your amnesia to your unique divine image. I see you and how stubborn you are. Who will be the Moses of our time and assuage God's anguish at witnessing our stubbornness? Well, Jesus. Jesus already did. And yet we continue to slap on the shackles onto our wrists, binding us to those gods willfully and by choice. James Finley said, Jesus saw God in all that he saw. Jesus sees you and how stubborn you are, how stubborn I am. And still, Jesus sees God in me, and Jesus sees God in you. And Jesus filled every space, every atom of life and being so that there would be nothing that can separate us from God's unfathomable love and grace and mercy. Because when we look into God's mirror, if you remember me talking about that, what is reflected back is not only our unique image, but all of creation. So when I step away from God's mirror and literally forget who I am, because I can't see God's reflected image back on me, I also forget who everyone else is. God's unique image in a way that no one else is. And when I step away from God's mirror and forget who I am, I try to create another mirror that reflects a static image. Because I'm not God, I can't create life. A fixed form is all I can do, and that only allows me to see everyone else in that same static form. And I have, horror of horrors, spit in God's face. And absolutely, thoroughly frayed the bands of my relationships. The power fueled by God's love and grace is siphoned off and drained when I try to make an idol of myself or anyone else. When I say that my God looks like my body, when I say then that your body should look like mine, or someone else's, or the way that I think about how things should, how other people should think, I spit in God's face. And there's a way to remedy this. It goes back to mindfulness. Parker Palmer says this, it's beautiful. The soul is like a wild animal. Tough, resilient, resourceful, savvy, self-sufficient. It knows how to survive in hard places, but it is also shy. Just like a wild animal, it seeks safety in the dense underbrush. If we want to find and see a wild animal, we know that the very last thing that we should do is go crashing through the woods yelling for it to come out. But if we will walk quietly into the woods, sit patiently by the base of the tree, and fade into the surroundings, the wild animal we seek might put in an appearance. And so is our soul. We need to be quiet, and we need to wait and hear instead of forcing it. Okay, God, I'm listening. Come on, I want to hear you. But our soul isn't ready until we wait patiently. God is mindful of us. God's being is oriented toward our well-being, showing us things that are true and honorable, just, pure, and lovely, and bear the image and likeness of God. I wonder, will you join me this week and take one of these words each day? And I've done something to make it kind of easy. I, of course, have a handout now, and I put one word for each day and just a prompt of what you might possibly do. And maybe if we are practicing this together and we continue this and we show the way of how we can be thinking on these things, living like we know that this God is mindful of us and we can be mindful of one another, that maybe our words will be different. Maybe we can take over Facebook if we are on it, or in the ways that we have our conversations with each other, be a model of this. So on Monday, it's not in any order, but so for instance, invite God to speak loveliness into you. A mindfulness practice of centering on those things that are lovely. And invite the Spirit to bring to mind someone who might remind you of that loveliness, or who might appreciate loveliness from you. Make a prayer, write a note, or a Facebook post of a blessing of loveliness. Isn't that lovely? Let's do that on Monday. Let's do it together. And I would love to see, or if you want to send me an email of what you are sharing, I'd love to see that too. But can we agree to do that together? On Tuesday, invite God to open your eyes to what is pure in yourself, in someone else, or in creation, and make a prayer, write a note, or an email of blessing that describes that pureness, the purity of whatever it is that comes to mind. But wait with it, because, your soul's a wild animal. Give it time. God is mindful of us. Amen.